Charles Kennedy MP is at 24 the youngest member of Parliament, and he's now one of the 6 Social Democratic MPs in the new House. He graduated from Glasgow University last year with honours in politics, philosophy and English, and he was president of the Students' Union. Mr. Kennedy looks like being a regular guest on this programme for the next 50 years or so, though I may not last that full time. And what else does the future hold for him, though? Leader of the party, perhaps, the SDP, when Dr. David Owen retires in 30 years' time? Prime Minister of an alliance government in the early years of the next century? Who knows? Watch this programme and judge for yourself.
There have been 3 occasions in the last 100 years, that the Conservatives, when they're in opposition, have lost a by-election for a seat that they hold to another party. And this was the 3rd such occasion.
What was the second?
The second was David Steele.
What was the first?
And the first was in Londonderry in 1911.
Oh, right.
And
no, I didn't know about that. Didn't know about Londonderry.
So there we are. Now,
nobody told us about Londonderry.
Well, there you are. You see, get that BBC political factual unit onto the case. Yes, we do come into politics to want to do things to make the world a better place, but that usually involves spending money. And when the money has dried up internationally, it's very hard for democratic leaders and politicians to deliver. And that creates the conditions where, frankly, reactionary, and I would argue slightly off-the-wall politics like UKIP begin to not just fester, but actually begin to prosper. And we've got, as mainstream politicians, to take that one head-on. So you've got to offer hope. And if you don't offer hope in politics, frankly, you may as well lock the door, throw away the key. You've got to offer hope, but at the same time, you've got to be honest with people. And I think if you treat people as adults, they respond as adults. That doesn't appear to be...
What about the question, would you like to be in or out?
Well, I've always felt, whether it was on Maastricht, whether it was on a single currency, which Tony Blair balked at, or whether it is at some as yet unforeseen further development, which will take place, actually, we all know in our hearts, the argument will come down to, do you want us in or out? And that's a good, honest argument that we need to have, because this issue, and I'm strongly in favour of Britain taking a leading role at the top table in Europe, this issue has bedevilled successive prime ministers and governments, and it's just got to be resolved. Okay, let's go back to recent history. Why have we got Section 28? We've got Section 28 because of a slightly madcap idea that Mrs. Thatcher got into her head.
Oh, don't blame Margaret Thatcher.
It was. I'm sorry, Angela. Read the history books. You know, that's when it was enacted under Mrs. Thatcher.
What was the madcap idea?
She'd got into her mind that somehow all of local authorities and the education system in this country was some great left-wing conspiracy to undermine the moral fabric of the nation. And it was daft then, and it's daft now. I have been an MP for 17 years. I could not count 7 or 17 times that I've had a letter from a constituent, or a visit, or a phone call from a constituent telling me, do you realise that the teacher at the end of the road in the local school is somehow corrupting the youth of our country? They're not. Trust our teachers. That's why we educate them, that's why we train them, and they are more than sensible enough to handle this without the politicians making the mess of it that it is allowed to become. But the Labour Party walked through the division lobbies with the right wing of the Conservative Party.
Charles, you walk through with the right wing of the Conservative Party every single week in division after division to cut tuition, to increase tuition fees, VAT hike. You do it every single time.
You can't accuse me on tuition fees. I was a party leader, I was against them, I spoke against them under the coalition, and I voted against them.
But your
so get your
party
facts
is continuing to support this coalition coalition government, which is doing deeply damaging things.
It's Labour opportunism on Europe which will come back to bite them. And I make that prediction. It will.
Ian Duncan Smith.
I think it's much too early, myself, in this coalition to judge what the long-term impact is going to be on either of the participants in the coalition. And I say that for this reason. There are two readings of history here where Liberals hooking up with Conservatives are concerned. One is it proves to be disastrous for the Liberals, and there's quite a lot of historical evidence to that effect. There is another interpretation, which is that, in fact, Liberals, when they dally with Labour politicians over the years, tend to end up getting nothing for their efforts. At least when you dally with Conservatives, there's a greater chance you might get into some form of power. My worry, the reason I couldn't, as you know, my views are well known, I didn't endorse the coalition when it was formed. I think from the moment it was formed, it was here to last. I think those who predicted it wouldn't last this Parliament were completely wrong.
You think it'll last right through the 5 years?
Yes, I think it will.
Because some people are talking about the possibility of Cameron running for an election after the local elections and completely destroying the Liberal Democrats. And, do you think anything in that?
No, I don't, as a matter of fact.
A simple question. Are the mainstream political parties in crisis? Charles Kennedy.
Now, who was it that never said crisis? What crisis? No, I don't think they're in crisis, but I think that